Browser games. Oh, those were the days. Constantly clicking in and out of tabs not to get caught playing countless games. Only one in every 4 or 5 being any good. As long as there are boring classes in a room with computers, browser games will live on. While I wasn't old enough to experience the golden age of Flash games, the likes of Papa Louie or the Run series, I did come across some of my own favorites. They are made by a creator under the name eddynardo, where his games were 15 levels each, all with a similar art style, with each title boasting different characters and mechanics to platform with. My favorite of the bunch was Choppy, a short game that had much less emphasis on puzzles and focused on its cool movement system, that being the axe you could throw and bounce off of. About a year and a half ago, I was revisiting these games and decided to look into what eddynardo was doing in the present day. And to my surprise, I found he'd actually published a Steam game, Super Choppy. It looked like a really polished version of the original, expanding on the concept with plenty more gimmicks. A bit over half a year later, I started YouTube with most of my early videos being centered around playing his browser games since I didn't have a way of recording from my Switch yet. eddynardo himself actually contacted me and gave me a free copy of Super Choppy to play myself. And I loved the game. Bit of a shame I never bothered making all the videos to the game, because motivation be damned, but it was really impressive. And I've been meaning to talk about this game for a while, as it feels pretty unknown despite the quality. Upon booting up the game, we get an extremely clean intro, quickly followed by a basic menu. There isn't much to do but start up the game. The game is split into multiple worlds, each boasting 20 levels, all single screen. We're shown that the objective of each room is to free everyone before being allowed to move on. Simple, but effective. It feels comparable to the strawberries in Celeste, where it forces you to approach each stage with a route in mind, since you will most likely end up doubling back in a few spots instead of charging from point A to B. The first world felt like it was ripped straight from the original game, using most of the same set pieces and not being overly focused on puzzling room layouts yet, although you can tell the quality of the level design went up between the games. The controls feel just as great as the original, and the axe is a really fun tool to use, allowing you to bounce off of it as well as interact with plenty of objects and enemies. Some levels do a really good job at show instead of tell, as mechanics are easily taught to the player without them being told to do anything. By far one of the strongest aspects of this game, as I was really surprised to see how many unique mechanics there were when looking back, simply because they were so naturally implemented. The second world holds a fun new movement option, where recalling your axe after lodging it into a specific wall gives you a massive boost in height. This is where the game truly starts to shine, as now you have to navigate levels carefully as to not waste the boost that you might need later. Playing without the axe is nothing new, these ghost switches have the same concept, but it always felt obvious where you need to go next. Except for this one room, I couldn't figure out where to go for 20 minutes. It was a skill issue on my end, but regardless. This, however, feels much more open-ended, where it's not nearly as obvious, and way more fun to use because more movement in a game with great controls. It's a recipe for success. The third world introduces the bubble, where as long as your axe is lodged in the wall, you get a bubble allowing for higher jumps and slower descent, which disappears upon regaining the axe. It acts as a sort of opposite to the delayed benefit of the previous mechanic. This is then combined with a new enemy that follows you around while your axe is lodged, adding a lot more pressure to each level than before. This world leans far more into execution than puzzles, save a few levels. Though the levels that do combine the two are some of the best in the game. My favorite has to be level 320, where you combine all the previously taught skills with tight platforming. Although, shout out to that level that combines the bubble and the leg boost.
That's quite big. Impressive.
The game then caps off with a boss against a mimic, where you have to hit both sides to deal damage. The difficulty of the boss is a bit all over the place, and the two movement mechanics don't need to be utilized at all throughout the fight. In fact, I occasionally try to use them, but I feel like it overcomplicates things. Regardless, it does a solid job at capping off the game. The game is short and sweet, where it's designed to be easily replayable. and that's only emphasized by the extra modes added in. In the speedrun settings of the menu, you have a couple game modifiers. Turn tentacles off, letting you just charge through rooms. Inverse levels, where you go through levels backwards, and mimics, where you have to attack chests instead of simply walking towards them. The tentacle and mimic option don't do much except make the game easier, one option a bit more than others. Although the inverse levels option was really impressive. During the main game, I kept wondering what these random pieces of levels were doing that really seemed to serve no purpose. Apparently, they were for the levels to be possible backwards, which is really cool in showing how effective yet compact these levels were made. The difficulty spike is all over the place in inverse levels. I really wouldn't recommend it unless you played the main game first, but it's still cool. As for any critiques I have on the gameplay, I've already expressed how much I love the levels and how they're designed, but the difficulty between them all can be pretty inconsistent. Some levels call for much higher level of execution compared to what would have previously been asked, and then it would go on to be completely normal difficulty again. I've gotten better now, but my first playthrough had me stuck on some of these levels for 10 or more minutes at times, followed by levels being done within 5 attempts each right after. The game is also lacking in a bit of personality. Don't get me wrong, in terms of art and music, both are well done, especially the art, massive glow up from the first game. But the game doesn't do much to stand out other than being an eddynardo game, which that's more than good enough for me, but it does make you get a bit lost among other platformers. I would argue though that the gameplay is more than enough to make up for this, especially with the game's short runtime, easily being completed in one sitting. This is just a really good game. It's easy to jump into, very satisfying controls and level design, nothing overstays its welcome, plus the extra game modes add on to the already plentiful replayability. And if you're unsure about picking this game up, you basically have a demo along with eddynardo's other games on this website to be able to try out. This game is nothing revolutionary by any means, but I've always found it impressive, and still do, just how well eddynardo can take simple gimmicks and effectively teach and expand them to players within such a short span of time. If even a fraction of the quality of this game were to go into his future projects, I'd happily look forward to whatever will come next. But seriously, go check out these games, they're really fun. Links in the description, please play them, they are so good.